Our man Scott Bailey, who provided such brilliant coverage for us during the Ashes, rejoins us again. I know it's been a big, long night for you, Scott. I genuinely say what a fantastic effort from your team. It was something to admire, mate. 6 World Cup wins now and 5 of those on the road.
Yeah, incredible. And I was having this conversation with my boss a little earlier. I wasn't alive for the 1987 one, but that was obviously an incredible win given where Australian cricket was at the time and on the subcontinent, and Australia's record over there then was arguably worse than what it is there now. But the 1999 World Cup always stands out to me as the most incredible one given the circumstances and what Australia had to do. 03, 07 were pretty dominant, 2015 at home. But this tournament, when you consider they were 0-2, they had an incredible number of injuries. They couldn't pick their best team until the semi-final stage. They looked all at sea in that third game of the tournament against Sri Lanka. It looked like it was going to be all over. To go from there to winning a 6th World Cup, as you say, and their 5th in the last 7 tournaments is just an incredible effort.
Scott, I've got so many questions here, mate, and I wanted you to compare these other sides, but I was just saying that stat to the people. 87, you won it in India, 99 in England, and then to South Africa in 03 and 07 in the Windies, and that just such a dominant side. Ponting a century in 03, and then Gilly a century in 07. 15, you win it at home, and then again on the road. Looking at the teams that have won it in the past, compared to the names on the team sheet that win it this time, is this I suppose, not an underrated side, but perhaps an undervalued side in terms of the superstars that you don't have?
Yeah, I think so. I was actually, just as I started to begin speak to you, I was just beginning a piece then, which essentially says that I think, this isn't the Australian side of the turn of the century where the Wars, Vaughan, McGrath, Gilchrist, Ponting, that's arguably across, both white and red ball cricket, the greatest side or very close to the greatest side ever assembled. But this team has a way to win tournaments and to win big games, and to consistently be, in the big games. You know what I mean? Like they've retained 2 Ashes series in England without winning a series, but they still retain them in Test cricket. And then when it comes to the white ball formats, I think it was the same story in 2021 in the T20 World Cup where they weren't the best side on paper by any means. They came into the tournament ranked 6th or 7th, but they just know how to get to the back end of tournaments and how to give themselves a chance to win tournaments. And they also perform incredibly well under pressure. It's pretty rare this Australian side goes to water, so when they get themselves to a final, they tend to fare pretty well in it. And that was really evident last night, especially when you consider the pressure that was on India. And India's, let's be honest, a really poor record when it comes to World Cup finals, across all formats at the moment. Australia put themselves in the position and then were able to make so many cool, calm decisions under pressure to win themselves the World Cup. So, yeah, it's hard to compare across eras, but I think what this team's been able to do with the talent they've got is incredible. And especially, too, when you consider that this is a side that's gone through a lot in the last 10 years and in a number of difficult situations in the Australian team, but also a side that grew up watching the most dominant team of our era, and then went through a period where Australian cricket was in a fairly decent hole there, the early 2010s. So what they've been able to do in recent years has been incredible.
What was the mood of the Australian public towards this team after losing the first 2 matches? Then they win 7. Was the mood that, genuinely people believe that, hey, they're in the semi-finals, they can close this thing out? Because do remember the 2 teams that had beaten them were South Africa and India.
Yeah, there was a lot of panic, I think, among the Australian public who were watching it. They probably got a little bit lucky, in that this tournament began while the Rugby World Cup was still ongoing. So right. I think most of Australia's frustrations were directed at Eddie Jones and the Wallabies. And obviously cricket is a far bigger sport here than what rugby union is. But the Wallabies mess probably saved them a little bit at the start, I think. And the fact that those 2 matches were both day-night matches, they finished at 3 a.m., it was almost like by the time Australia realised this tournament was on, Australia was 0-2. And it's kind of gone from then on in, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for those who were paying close attention to it, I think there were a lot of concerns. There were real questions about the planning of the tournament. I mean, they dropped Alex Carey after 1 match, which, Australia had never dropped a wicketkeeper at a men's World Cup before. So to do it after 1 match raised some serious questions about what they were doing in their planning for this tournament. then they decided to take Travis Head or pick Travis Head for the tournament while he was still at home nursing a fractured hand. And obviously in hindsight, that was a great decision.
Brilliant idea, yeah. Mm.
At the time, there were some questions asked about that and just generally where the team was going. And I mentioned it before, but sort of halfway through Sri Lanka's innings in Australia's third match, I think Sri Lanka were none for 110 or so.
It's for 121, I think it was, mate. Something like that. Yeah, crazy.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and at that point, I think my memory of social media was alight with, geez, this is a disgrace if they're going the exact same way as the Wallabies. And obviously since then they haven't lost a game and done a pretty decent job of it.
Travis Head, I'm just looking through his stats. Okay, he had his one-day debut 2016 against the West Indies. Hasn't played a lot. He's only played 54 one-days during that time. He's played 42 tests. Thing I like about this guy is he looks like a club cricketer. No disrespect to the guy, doesn't he? But I mean, he's hardly buff. He's hardly the gym guy. His shirt is a little fitting and so forth. But when it comes to it, bowling against South Africa, getting hit for fours, then he picks up crucial wickets. That catch over his head last night, I mean, without that, India looked as though they could have gone on and easily got over 300. Then he comes in with the bat and smacks 137 off 120. You talk about clutch. You don't have to look like an athlete. You just got to play like one, right?
Well, his record with the untamed Mo is far superior to his record without the untamed Mo.
Brilliant. See, that's the kind of stat I love, okay? Grow the porn moustache, the guy turns into the porn star.
Well, he cut it midway through the Ashes from memory. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was between the Lord's Test and the Leeds Test in Australia. Of course, they didn't win a Test match after that over there. And he made the comment the other day, actually, that he'd lost his clippers or something, so therefore the Mo was definitely playing the rest of the World Cup. But no, you're right. That catch last night, and to be fair to Travis Head, he's not the world's best fielder, and he sort of admitted after the game that Rohit Sharma was, I think his line was incredibly unfortunate or incredibly unlucky to be caught by him. But he's, again, another guy who stands up in big games. He was player of the match in the World Test Championship final a few months ago when he again hit India to all parts. And then, obviously, his effort with the bat last night, after his effort against the Black Caps on return a couple of weeks ago now, was brilliant. I think also, like the thing about his spin is interesting because Australia really like these kind of finger spinners on subcontinent wickets where there's not as much chance of things going wrong. Like even in Test cricket, they've tended to go with someone like him as a second spinner in Sri Lanka last year, for example, and using him as much as they say use Mitchell Swepson in that series because they like the fact that with a finger spinner, the natural variation on those wickets can do all kinds of things. And as long as you get it somewhere near the right area, your chance of taking wickets or in the one-day game getting through overs. So he was such a crucial part of Australia's team with the ball, especially once Ashton Agar went down because they sort of made the call that they would be able to rely on his spin along with Glenn Maxwell's in the back end of the tournament once Travis Head was fit. And then, with the bat last night, I think he sort of admitted that his first 5 or 10 overs wasn't the best against the quicks. He sort of got himself in some weird positions, but he was able to survive. And then against the spin, which has long been, a year ago there were calls for him to be axed from the Test team for the Tour of India, and he did get dropped for that first Test because his record against the spin in subcontinent is not great. But last night I thought he was really good against the spin, really composed, and the way he and Marnus Labuschagne were able to tick the strike over and just constantly get singles without taking too many risks was really crucial there from, say, the 10th to 25th over.
Couple of questions, Scott. We'll let you go. The toss. Were you yelling at the TV at that stage? What the hell are you doing, solar panel Pat, mate? Bat first.
I was surprised. And then when it's funny, actually, because they went to Nasser Hussain shortly after the toss, and I sort of had visions of Nasser Hussain winning the toss and bowling first at the Gabba in the 2002-03 Ashes, and that going so terribly for them for England. But by the same token, like it was one of those ones where I was surprised. The more you thought about it, actually, obviously it proved to be the right decision, but I could see the logic because obviously the dew is such a big factor over there, and from what you could see of previous games at Ahmedabad, batting second had been a bit of an advantage with a bit more pace on the wicket with the dewy surface. So. Especially when you consider it looked like it was going to be a slow wicket, and Cummins clearly this was part of his thinking because his first ball was a slower ball. The first ball he bowled, they used spin quite well. They used change-ups quite well. I thought with the ball Australia taking the pace off the ball, and then by the time that India's quicks were bowling, it wasn't as effective because all of a sudden boundaries were getting hit square of the wicket where they could, India couldn't hit boundaries square of the wicket because there wasn't as much pace on the pitch. So, at the time I raised my eyebrows, and then the more I thought about it, I thought, actually, I quite like this move, and clearly it turned out to be the right one.
Does this make up for the Rugby World Cup? Does it make up for the Kangaroos getting stuffed by the Kiwis?
Yes, I think so. I regret to say that. I mean, but yeah, the Rugby World Cup is turned into, we've just seen the chairman of Rugby Australia quit overnight after mounting pressure from the States. Yes, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in that field at all, but obviously rugby in Australia is in a very dire position, to say the least. And as for the Kangaroos getting beat, I think, to be honest, mate, that was forgotten about 12 hours later in Australia because it was after the grand final, and the World Cup people tend to not notice that happening. But having said that, that was quite an eye-opener, wasn't it? 30-0. I'd almost forgotten about myself, but that was quite something.
Well, so was your win last night, mate. And, as I said earlier on the show, you don't raise the bar, you set the bar. It's extraordinary, to win 6 of these, to win 6 of them since 1987, to win 5 on the road. Is doffing the hat to you, mate. I mean, that team of yours is outstanding. Yeah, no, it's, I think, as I sort of hinted earlier, I think this Pat Cummins side, or this era in the last couple of years, they always said this was going to be a legacy-defining year for them with the amount of cricket they had, and I think they've put themselves among the great Australian sides. Maybe not necessarily on paper, but definitely in terms of results and performances in big games. Scott, thank you so much again for your time, mate. Scott Bailey, AAP, out of Australia, talking one-day cricket in the final and Aussie winning it again.